This is a Meeseeks box. Let me show you how it works. You press this.
I'm Mr. Meeseeks! Look at me!
You make a request. Mr. Meeseeks, open Jerry's stupid mayonnaise jar.
Yes, sirree!
The Meeseeks fulfills the request.
All done!
Wow!
And then it stops existing.
My friend Sarah asked me to help her make some wedding cake toppers for her brother's wedding, who happens to be a Rick and Morty fan, and I happen to be a Rick and Morty fan. So it's the perfect opportunity to make some Rick and Morty fan art. I'm going to be using Sculpey polymer clay, but also these items here as my base, so I'm not constructing something made of just solid clay. This will make up its interior. I'm just building up a structure with the tin foil underneath for the clay to offer it some support, and it also saves me from using as much clay, which can be costly. After I've made my shape for underneath, I start just smoothing out bits of clay with the rolling pin, and then just kind of flattening them onto the shape, trying to make it smooth, and basically just rough in some details as I go. For adding the hair, I just make little shapes with the clay and then try to smooth the seams out with the rest of the head with the tools that I have. And once they are baked, they should be there quite solidly. Now this is the first one of 4 Mr. Meeseeks that I'll be making, and being the first one, it's a little rough as I tried to figure out what I was doing. So just to smooth in the cracks and any little mistakes I might have made, I'm using liquid Sculpey that I'm just painting on, and it will smooth out. I just happen to have blue, so that's what I'm using, but I have full intentions on painting over this once it's all baked and cooled. After I finished making this guy, I made 3 more. So we had a big pair and a small pair.
Let me try something! I'm Mr. Meeseeks! Look at me! I'm Mr. Meeseeks! I'm Mr. Meeseeks! Look at me! Hi!
I baked them in the oven as per the baking instructions on the Sculpey, and then it was time to apply the base coats of paint. After I do this, I'm going to be handing them off to Sarah so she can finish the rest of it. And with that, off to Sarah's house we go.
Thank you, Cindy, for getting these sculptures started for me. So these are going to be cake toppers, or at least 2 of them are, for a wedding cake that I'm making for my brother starting tomorrow. His wedding is on Saturday. So what I am going to do is paint the faces onto these fun little critters from Rick and Morty, and we're gonna go from there. I'm also gonna sculpt some accessories using a little bit of Model Magic because I want them to have a bow tie and a bouquet. A feeling that the smaller ones are going to end up being the cake topper because we're still in somewhat of a lockdown. The wedding is going to be very, very small. So I'm making a very, very small wedding cake for this wedding. But the other ones will end up being a gift. We kind of went with 2 sizes just to see what we would end up with, in the hopes that we would be open enough to be able to have a full wedding, but at the very least my family can attend, so that's a plus. this. So I like using Model Magic. I think Cindy used either Sculpey or Fimo for the original things here because it behaves a lot like fondant. And I have a background in cake decorating. It was a summer job that I had for a while working for a little bakery, and then I sort of took the roadshow on my own and did it from home for a little bit. So what I'm actually going to use for the bouquet is a trick that I would use in fondant in order to make a flower. So you take your Model Magic, or if you were using fondant, your fondant, you flatten it into a little circle, and you make 5 circles that are all about the same size. And once you have 5 of these, you could use a cutter if you were going to be doing this in fondant or whatever. And then you roll it up. You roll it up. Petals. Now there's a reason why they chose these characters for the wedding. I admit that I personally have not seen enough Rick and Morty to know really anything about them.
Your failures are your own!
But they have matching tattoos of these little characters, and they seem to think it's funny, so worth a shot. And once that dries, we can paint it, glue it in place. And we got a little fella holding some flowers here, and then the next one's gonna have a bow tie. There's flower number 1. Actually, you know what, we're not too thrilled with that. Let's take off a little bit more. Using just a little old utility knife to cut this. Model Magic is great because you don't need an oven to dry it. It air dries. It just takes probably about 3 days to do it. You can speed up the process if you're like me and just use a fan, which is what I'm gonna do because I want this done as quickly as possible. It's easy to take extra off. It's a lot harder to put it back on because Model Magic is not all that forgiving in that respect, but make something too big, you just pop it off. You can buy proper clay tools. I am working with what I have. I haven't really done much sculpture other than fondant in probably the last 15 years. It's been a while. So there we go. We've got, that's gonna be a look. We've got our little bride and groom. I was thinking of maybe putting a veil on one of them, but I know that the bride is not wearing the veil, so we'll wait on that. All right, and we'll do another one for the big set in a minute. A little crafty white acrylic that I've just been sitting around here for a while. I don't even know what I bought it for at this point. And we're going to grab a tiny, tiny brush. Over this with black to make the shape of the teeth. But I just think this will be easier than fighting with the paint pen to get it to be an opaque white. When I have opaque white paint, that'll do it in one go. You just gotta be a bit more delicate. White's done. Let that dry while we sculpt the accessories for the bigger guys. Once that dries, we'll paint it black. And we're gonna do the same little bouquet thing that we did earlier. dry for a bit. So I'm gonna sit those in front of the fan. There we go, I'm pretty happy with that. Until the Modern Magic dries. Okay, time to paint our accessories. So we've got a couple of little flower bouquets here and a couple of bow ties. If you hear something rattling in the background, it's the fan that I have set up to dry things. So we want to expedite the process because I want to put this on a wedding cake pretty quickly. And I want to make sure that it dries quickly. So we're gonna get started with painting our flowers here. I've got a couple of acrylic paints acquired over the years from probably various dollar stores. But they will do the job. Doesn't need to be anything fancy. Expensive materials have their time and their place, but so do the cheap ones, and you can make some pretty nice stuff even with dollar store materials. I'm gonna start painting our little flowers here. I've picked a pretty kind of mauve-ish pink. Probably won't take more than one, maybe 2 coats of this. Shouldn't take too long. Get paint on something you didn't want to get paint on, you can always paint over it after. We're going to paint everything that's supposed to be pink first, and then we'll come back and do everything that's supposed to be green. I am an impatient person and I like to speed up the process of drying. I own a hair dryer. I almost never use it on my hair. It almost exclusively gets used to dry paintings so that I can work on the next layer or complete them faster, because I'm just an impatient kind of person who likes stuff done really fast. Let's go ahead and paint our bow ties black. Once they're dry, I'm going to glue them to my figures here. The type of glue that I'm using is a multi-surface bond, non-toxic. I'm using, actually this is supposed to be for applying blending medium, or liquid frisket to watercolors. But this little brush also works really well for glue, so we're going to use it for glue. Piece, and then once it's dry, we just glue it together, and then it's going to go on top of the cake.
I think it's pretty awesome how these turned out. I hope you'll agree with me that Sarah did an amazing job finishing these little guys, and she baked that cake herself and iced it. My only regret is that I can't eat it, but I did get those cupcakes.